Greetings everyone, Panda here. We're at my studio outside Denver and I want to welcome you guys to the Backstage Pass. This is a video that I'm making just for all of you amazing Kickstarter backers that will take you inside the music, take a closer look at what some of these tracks are comprised of, the tools that I use to create them, and also the process of putting this album together, which was quite an involved process spanning roughly the last 3+ years. So I know that some of these things have been behind schedule. I want to thank you guys for your patience. Turns out a global pandemic is not conducive to meeting deadlines, but the music is done, the vinyl's on the way, and I'm really excited about the way things turned out. And I also want to say a huge thank you to all of you guys for backing the project. It really means a lot and it really made this project possible. So thank you all so much. Let's take a look at the music. All right, we are going to look really in depth at a couple tracks and go through all the different voices on those tracks, which will sort of show you what the music is comprised of. Before that, I thought it'd be cool if I showed you some of the kind of primary tools that I use to make this album. This banjo I played on pretty much everything. This is my 1930 Style 3 Gibson Mastertone, and the pot is from 1930. The neck is new, like a lot of pre-war banjos. I love the pre-war banjos. These are some of the 4-string necks I thought I'd show you guys. This is Style 11 neck. This is from a Style 1, and this is a Style 2. It's kind of my main banjo station right here. U67 copy that I love, made by Advanced Audio. Through this Universal Audio channel strip, that was kind of my main banjo signal path for the whole record. And there are a lot of banjos on these tracks, a lot of layered banjos in harmony, and then of course banjo is the lead voice on a lot of it as well. So that was kind of how all the banjo stuff went down. There's a lot of fun stuff in the shot right now, but I definitely use this micro Korg analog synth a good bit, the Casio SK5, and then this is my MIDI trigger, this Alesis 2-octave MIDI trigger, and I use that to create a lot of the virtual instrument sounds that you hear on the record. So this is my weird kind of hybrid electric guitar banjo. It's a solid body, so it plays exactly like an electric guitar, but it's got a 5-string neck, but not with the high string on top. It's more like a 5-string guitar, and I play it with finger picks, and I kind of mix the tuning up depending on the song. This is made by an amazing luthier and friend named Andrew Olson, who works for Bourgeois Guitars and builds incredible stuff. This instrument appears on every track in some capacity. It plays a lot of rhythm parts, a lot of chords in harmony, and then of course on a few tracks like Silver Droplet, Asleep at the Wheel of Fortune, and Holding Pattern, there are solos on this instrument that sound exactly like an electric guitar. This is a really beautiful, cool instrument, this Harmony Monterey archtop guitar, and I played this on a few tracks, and it's usually sort of more part of the sound bed of the track, but it has this really nice, lush, warm sound. And really kind of sits in there with the virtual instruments really well and brings that kind of more organic, acoustic, analog sound, which that's really one of the goals of the sound of this record, is to bring these futuristic sounds together with really old sounds, and banjo sort of sitting somewhere in the middle, being kind of the main compositional driver. Okay, the first track that we're gonna look at really closely here is Fulcrum. This is track 3, sort of a personal favorite of mine, and one that really brings together all the elements that make this album unique. We've got some really cool different vinyl samples on there, the symphonic stuff. We've got some beats that I made, we got live drums, bunch of harmony banjos. So from the top, it sounds like this. Once we get into the groove, we've got a lot of stuff going on in this track as we sort of get the rhythm set before the melody comes in. now I'm going to jump back and kind of solo up or isolate these sounds one at a time so you can hear what's going on. First, we'll look at the beat. So we've got this kind of MIDI beat holding things down, and then a sample of Nick, and then live Nick. So then we've got the beat going, and I'll put the sample in for you. And if we isolate that just by itself, and I can't reveal all my secrets here, but basically once I find a chunk of the symphonic sound that's really consonant with the track and seems like it's going to be working, then there's some trial and error before I find some passages that really fit in, and then I edit them to really mesh with, support, work with, and even take the lead on the track. So that's these sounds. If we let the track jump back in. So you can hear the sample kind of as I jump in and out of having the full track in there. It really brings a lot of texture to the music. Now, we'll jump down to these harmony banjos, and you start with there's one, there's two, and there's three. I'm gonna put the band in. And that's kind of a typical thing that I do on a lot of these tracks, is layer those rolling banjos and create textures and harmonic kind of chords. You just get that really cool, propulsive, synchronized sound. And then here are the electric guitar chords. The electric guitar chords, and then here comes the band. So you can see a lot of this layered stuff is really subtle, and even though you don't necessarily recognize it and listen to it and identify it as part of the melody or the character of the music, it's more sitting in there more subtly, but if you take it away, you really notice that the kind of texture of the music, the vibe of it, really kind of drops out. So all these sounds are working together. You've got electric guitars, you got rolling banjos, you got the samples and the beats. So those are really core elements. Now the other main sound of this record is the virtual instruments, and not everyone knows what virtual instruments are. They're basically software instruments, the interactive patches on the computer that I can control with my sequencing keyboard here, and they just give me all kinds of amazing weird sounds. So if we jump back into that section we were just looking at, these are the virtual instrument sounds. So I'll go through them kind of one by one. So we've got the bass, for starters, is a virtual instrument sound, and that's going to sound like this. And then we add the step sequencer. And then I use a lot of those like chimes, and then this sound is really prominent, and that's basically a cello played like pizzicato. I use that a lot on this record to double the lines that the banjo is playing. And then the last one that I didn't really kind of solo up right there is just what we call a pad, or a sustaining tone. It's like the ambiance of the track. So if I add everything back in, those are all the virtual instruments. And then if I drop the rest of the track in, bass, step sequencer, pad, another pad, the cello, and those are all the virtual sounds. And then of course we have the banjo. And then when we come to this B part, we got a harmony on the banjo. And like a lot of sections, this melody, we have a few different instruments playing it. I'll add a few of those in, and you get. Banjo fills that role, and then so we've got basically 6 voices playing the lead there. We've got the cello, Pitt's cello, we've got the synth lead, and then we've got the electric guitars. They sort of answer the phrase, and then we've got the 2 banjos. So starting with just a lead banjo. And then we have the harmony banjo. Then we have the Pitts strings and the synth lead. And then we add the electric guitars. Creates this big lush sound, and mixing all of these voices is a challenge. Just getting them to sit in their own sonic space, not necessarily compete with each other, but rather work together to create this big sound. That was one of the real challenges of this album, and mixing it, I really got my ass kicked and learned a lot in the process, but it was great. I'd never tried to mix anything like this in my life. Like if we go through this track, we've got the MIDI beat, we've got a drum sample, and then we've got 3 tracks of Nick, and then we've got 2 tracks of vinyl, that's 7, and then virtual instruments, bass, and then 5 voices, the step sequencer, 2 pads, the pizzicato cello, and the synth lead, so we're up to 12. Then we've got 2 banjos, 14, actually, sorry, I take that, we have 5 banjos, so up to 17, and then with electric guitar, we're up to about 20 different instruments on this track, so getting them all to sit together and work together is a real challenge. Now, as far as the arrangement of this tune, it follows kind of a similar course to a few of the tunes on this album, I think, where we kind of have this intro vibe that sort of sets the tone, and then instruments come in and sort of beef that intro vibe up. That sample's so cool there. And then the melody. The banjo plays the melody on the A part, then we have the B part melody. Then on this one, as on, let's see, 4 tracks, I think, Astral Plane, Fulcrum, Cloud Valley, the Stuart Duncan solo, and then Holding Pattern. Those are sort of the 4 that have jams or extended solos. And, you know, Trance Banjo was really a chance for me to bring together all the different sounds and approaches to music and arranging and writing that I'm into. So this is like really derivative of what the String Dusters do. You know, we have these extended improv jams, and I wanted to have some of the you know, I wanted the music mainly to be about the melodies and the tunes, but then I wanted some chances to stretch out. And so on this one, that's this jam. Where it breaks down and banjo really takes the lead with this big solo. And the way that I would set these sections up was that I would really build out the track and kind of have everything done before I was gonna set out to play this solo. I wanted these portions of the record to really be played and performed and not kind of stitched together piece by piece like a lot of the record. I wanted it to be a balance between feeling really live and natural as much as I could, playing basically every instrument and every voice myself, aside from the 2 Stuart Duncan fiddle tracks, and Nick plays live on 4 tracks, including this. I wanted it to have a live feel. So for a lot of the melody sections, and definitely for these jam sections, I would build the whole track out, and then once everything was done, I would just take some full passes at these solos and try to really get in that performance zone, less focused on the producing side of things, and get something that felt really live. All right, next up for the backstage pass breakdown is Wall Facer. So this one has some noticeable differences from Fulcrum. There's no live drums, there's no jam, it's all about the composition and the arrangement. And since there's no live drums, we've got my sort of beat formula for this record, which is straight driving digital beats, and that's this sound, combined with samples of Nick playing, and that's this. The samples come from a library that Nick and I kind of designed together. The idea behind combining the digital beats with Nick's beats is that digital beats alone can be a little dry, but when you add Nick in, you get some swing, you get some live feel. And the track now, the sample on this one is weird. It's not a string sample, which most of them are. It's more piano based. So you can actually hear that little lick in there. That is part of the melody, and I can't recall on this one if that informed the writing or vice versa. Oftentimes I can go through the big chunk of vinyl that I've imported and find little pieces that can accentuate or complement a melody that's already existing. Sometimes what I hear in there informs the stuff that I write. So beats and sample together. And you can hear this sample really has a lot of nice air, like that crackly sound gives so much to the track. Now we jump down here. This one doesn't have, it has 4 voices of virtual instruments on it, and those will be from the top. I'll just solo those up, isolate those so you can hear. There's the bass, the step sequencer comes in right here, and then the synth, and then the sustaining tone. The track back in. So we also have on Wall Facer here, we have the analog synth. That's the micro Korg this bad boy that I showed you guys before. And I love that sound. I think that's really influenced by, I don't know if you guys ever check out Tycho, but Tycho has all these great analog synth sounds. So there it is. That's the synth voice. So on top of all of that cool sound bed stuff, then of course we have the melody, and I will solo up the banjo. There's the banjo. And then we have, complementing the banjo, we have two cool electric guitar parts. There's one, and there's the other. So those are the electric parts. And then I'll add the banjo back in here. Take it out. And put the track back in. Wall facer. All right, let's take a look at one more. This is the silver droplet. Got this cool kind of spacey intro. Eventually jump to the melody. Banjo plays the melody, banjo plays the solo, and then we've got this electric guitar solo. Okay, so let's check out what's going on with this one. If we jump right to the top, you'll hear the sample on this one is really part of the sound bed throughout. So if we go right to the top, and I'll just solo up the sample. There's the sample. Right back in. Yeah, that sample you can see is thick throughout the whole tune. It just brings all this texture to the music. And then of course we have, right off the top, we have the lead banjo. And then I'll add the harmony banjo in. And they have that delay, that's that echo you hear on them. And then I'll put the band back in. And the beat on this one is pretty chill. Once we get to that melody rolling, you can hear that's the digital beat, and then this is the sample of Nick. That's just Nick. Not a lot of low end, that comes from the digital beat. But together, they have more of a groovy feel. All right, let's check out some of the virtual instruments on this one. So we jump to where the melody kicks in. We have the bass there, the step sequencer, the pits, the cellos, and then the sustaining tone, and then we have a synth lead here. So we put the band back in. On this one, arrangement-wise, form-wise, I play the melody on banjo, then I play a solo on banjo, that's derivative of the melody, and then we sort of jump back to that breakdown vibe, jump back to the intro vibe for the breakdown. And the electric comes in. We have the harmony banjos again. Going there, and I'll put the band back in. We have a cool different beat happening here in the breakdown. This is the digital beat and then Nick's sample, creating some more space, and then everything back in. You can hear the sample come back. upload. Thanks for tuning in. Hope everyone dug the backstage pass and the inside look at the music. I want to just say one more really heartfelt thanks for your support with this project. Last year was rough, not an easy year to be a performing musician, but last summer I really threw myself into Trance Banjo in a way that really saved my life, honestly. It was something to focus on, something to put my heart and soul into, and I was really floored by all the support when I launched the Kickstarter, and I really cannot thank you guys enough for that. Vinyl is on the way shortly, and yeah, I just hope you guys dig this music. You know, I started this album over 3 years ago, and it sat on the shelf because I just didn't have the time to pour into the experimentation phase to figure out how to make all this stuff work. And then when we found ourselves at home last summer, it was a question of how am I going to push this thing closer to the finish line, and then how am I going to get the funds together to actually turn it into a physical product, an album, something that people could stream, listen to, etc. And you guys really made that possible, and I can't thank you enough. So signing off for now, but stay tuned for the next single coming out soon, and then the whole album drops on February 12th, and I expect you guys to help me tell the world. All right, thanks so much.